And we'll start with a roll call. We have, I'm going to confuse myself by starting on my left here. We have Jack Scarborough and Bonnie, oh my gosh, Bonnie with Sears, I apologize. Bridget Powers, myself, Rebecca Hansen, Chris Buckley, and Brian Murphy. I will go from the right next time. That really confused me. And we will start by, oh yeah, I think maybe Bonnie's name is not on the list on the agenda. I was looking for that.
Right. I was too, and I thought, wasn't
yeah.
I've been kind of in and out this week, so I asked Josie to just copy for last week. Microphones, everyone?
Microphone's on.
I will take care of that.
Okay, so let's start with a review of the minutes from our meeting on, it says November, oh no, what, I'm really confused right now.
Oh. What agenda you working on?
No, I'm looking at the right agenda, I'm just looking at the wrong thing. December 14th, the minutes that are in front of us. Are there any comments, edits, corrections for the minutes from last week?
Well, Roe, there's no W in his name.
Okay. I was wondering how to spell that.
Just R-O-E.
Do we get these minutes ahead of time, or just when we get here right now, like say?
We usually get them just before the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So in other words, if I get here early enough, I could look at it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That was no, that's my fault. I wasn't here.
It should be going out. Work sessions being a little bit different than the regular meetings. I kind of geared towards that, so.
Is it possible to get them before?
Absolutely.
Okay, I mean, this meeting obviously was just a week after our last one, but
Right.
but if it would be helpful, we can probably get those beforehand, distributed by email.
Okay, there's my dilemma. I don't have email.
Okay.
We got a guy up on the roof with flags.
Okay.
We get someone to call you and read them over the telephone.
Right. I don't think that'll happen.
Well, you're downtown a lot, so it's
Yeah,
not.
I can stop by and get them if I just know when they're there, like
Just
I
don't
did the
send
other.
them out too early, Brian, because that's what happens at the Conservation Commission. Then everyone, oh, I'll read those later, and then they forget.
Yeah.
Any other comments, corrections?
I just have I mean, I'm not, 14 and 15 under continuing discussion of development of the master plan, the last two. I remember that conversation, but I don't know, the board asked that documents relating to conservation be sent to the planning board to be reviewed. I think that that was just I'm just making sure I upheld my duties, that if at the last Conservation Commission where we discussed the master plan, that I would bring that to the board. Yeah.
So this should maybe be rewritten to say that the board asks that any any comments from the Conservation Commission be run through the planning board before being inserted into the master plan.
And then the next one, the planning board meets tonight to have a discussion on conservation and the master plan. Is that what that's not really what we were.
We're going to have a discussion on we're going to discuss the comments from the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
Sure, of which there's really one so far.
All right.
Rebecca, how did you word that for number 14?
Oh, geez. The board asked that any comments from the Conservation Commission to be sent or reviewed by the planning board before being inserted into the master plan. And you get the number 15 as well, Brian? Have a discussion about Conservation Commission comments. And then also in number 15, the, instead of interns, Plymouth State students. And we do not have Bonnie as one of the members present.
This is the problem with templates. Okay, we will straighten that out.
Are we good to make a motion on approving the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on, public comments unrelated to the agenda. None from Frank. Continuing our discussion on the master plan. Chris, would you like to start with comments from the Conservation Commission?
So far, we actually talked about the master plan for quite a long time the other night, but there weren't necessarily, except for one thing, they found it more interesting. I think that we're going to have to look at it a little more. It was pretty overwhelming for a lot of the members of the Conservation Commission. But the one thing that, and this is very minor, but under, on the section, implementation, chapter 3, on the first batch of, that's volume 1, chapter 3. And I think after the conversation we had the other night, the Conservation Commission understands a lot more what to look for. And so more things could be forthcoming.
Okay.
But on, so we're in implementation, chapter 3, on page 51, number 10. The Conservation Commission just thought they should be included as one of the administrators of number 10, protect fragile resources, environmentally sensitive areas, et cetera, that the PCC should be part of that.
I agree.
I mean, like I said, it was very minor, but we found the maps useful. They got a lot of good information. It was a nice discussion. I mean, clearly what it really showed is that everyone in the town needs to be looking at this master plan, because it's an incredibly useful document, so.
And I think sort of a conversation maybe coming up in the future is how because there's a lot of things that the Conservation Commission is slated as being responsible for. Just noticing all the bolds are gone in that section.
Were the bolds?
They were supposed to be the person who's there, the organization that's the lead. But how are we going to be checking in regularly with the Conservation Commission? How can they add to their agenda regularly about the stuff that they should be working on with the master plan?
Yeah.
So, who, and maybe, Brian, this might be a question for you, now that Greg is not here taking notes. I feel like we need one person who's going to be keeping track of the edits that we put in these documents, or else I think we're just going to lose everything.
I'm happy to do that, Rebecca, if.
That'd be great.
Yeah, perfect.
I just think, if one person's doing that way, we're not losing it.
Yep.
I would also volunteer to help.
And that might be good, Jack, if two people
Yeah.
are on it that way.
I've got ample time. In fact, I went through part 2, most of 2.5 chapters today,
Great,
and I have a lot of comments.
awesome. Okay, so it sounds like there could be more comments coming from the Conservation Commission.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and certainly the public hearings,
Yeah.
we'll be there,
Okay.
so.
All right, so moving on to the discussion of part 2, or volume 2, which, if you look at the master plan, this is where I get very confused about this. Volume 2 in the table of contents of of volume 1 is actually called the Plymouth Data Book, which puts this into context a lot more because it's a whole lot of data. So before we get into specific comments, I kind of want to think about big picture and what we want our master plan to look like. This is, I mean, I was hoping Bill was going to be here to tell me if he has ever referred to this in his years as working on the planning board, but this is not super accessible. I think the information is really interesting, but it's almost like an introduction to Plymouth as opposed to something that I think that needs to be in the master plan. And just the only things that we're legally required to have in a master plan is the vision and the land use section. So the rest is kind of up to us. So
I agree with you, and I'm going to go back historically and say that a lot of this volume was data that previous board thought should be captured and available for the public, but it isn't the main point. That the first volume should capture what you've identified.
It's just background information.
This is the reference.
Right.
So what do we want to see as far as how much of this information do we want to include in the master plan? How much information is important for us to update?
Again, I'm happy, as I said earlier, I've gone through 2.5 chapters of it already, and I think we could lose 50 pages.
Yeah, I would say,
Easy.
yeah.
I was going to say 75, but I'll be restrictive.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, an approach I would like to take is kind of back to where it had been, that this volume is purely background documentation and a data source.
Right.
That's why nobody's read it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing is what's
it-
the value of something that nobody's ever going to read?
Right, but if we have it,
Right.
certainly I should get it in a folder out in the public area downstairs.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the data in there doesn't change radically, I imagine, between the last.
Well, 95
edition.
to 2017,
Yeah,
that changes.
We no
What, was
longer
this
have the
compiled
Delphi
in
cable.
2005, or is the stuff in here from 95?
There's stuff, pretty old stuff.
so they pretty much just adopted the
Yeah.
other one and
Yeah.
added to it.
Yeah.
So that's probably why we need to edit it down, okay. And chances are that board also cheated.
Yeah, the dates are different depending on what piece of data you're looking at.
Yeah. Yep. And I guess, my overall comments, just a question about organization of the document and your point of, let's be consistent
Yeah.
in what we've got.
I kind of like calling it the data book. I mean,
Yeah.
that's right and to the point.
Right. So when we refer, so
So it's,
I don't want to be too nitpicky about, it's the confusion that I just never seen this before. So, I mean, I knew it kind of existed, but yeah, and just some of the language in these two, it's a very, it's not quite manipulative, but it's a little interesting in the way things are phrased. So if we can, neutralize the language.
Like, can you give an example?
Yeah, it's,
What section, where are you in?
I can't,
Okay.
can I
yeah,
contract?
yeah.
I, in a previous life, worked as a consultant, contractor, and I wrote documents for organizations like this, and I'm certainly not chastising our contractors who published this or put this together for us, because they did exactly what I did. And you you throw everything you possibly can out of the kitchen sink into a document, and you hope that the board or body that's going to review it looks at it and hones out what they really want. What they're giving you is a full plate
Yep.
to pick from.
Right.
So here's your smorgasbord,
Yeah.
pick your pasta.
Yeah. And I think we're in, just sort of big picture, we're kind of facing a kind of a unique opportunity where, we've had a lot of turnover at the people, at the where we were being led.
Yes.
And now this gets to be ours a little bit more because we get to lead the process, but at the same time, we've got to pick up from where we're like, I think we're all doing a bit of
Well,
head
we've got-
scratching,
well,
trying to
and-
figure out what the heck's going on, so.
We have a very good smorgasbord, I think.
Okay,
So
I'm glad to hear you say that. 'Cause I've been going through it and saying, what's this got to do
Yeah.
with a lot of what I think we're trying to do?
We just
so,
want to make sure that the things that are guiding the volume one are up to date at this point.
and are available.
Yes.
As a data source for the
Right.
public. Where did you come up with these figures or basis for this decision in volume one?
okay.
Volume two?
So maybe we can just sort of speak generally on each of these sections and kind of what we thought about, fill you in, Bridget, since you weren't here. We were looking at each of these volumes, and maybe you caught wind of this a little bit, to try, and then Greg had passed around this list of what's in all of the old master plan and what we were supposed to be working on all along
Okay.
in red. None of which we have done. So,
I sensed something from Greg.
yeah, and so I think that there was, I'm not really sure why we weren't working on these things. And it just didn't happen. So here we are. We have the economic profile, we have the transportation profile. The rest of the board was supposed to work on. Steve Whitman's class is going to work on the natural heritage section. And then we have to kind of make a decision that for this iteration of the master plan that we'd like to hopefully have go live, I would say maybe by July. Are we gonna have these sections updated by then, and who's gonna do them? Is it gonna be a board-driven thing? Is there someone else we can reach out to do?
So in other words, like population,
Yep.
that almost, that would need to be totally re-researched.
Right.
Because in 10 years, the population has changed dramatically.
Right, we
And I'm
have a
sure that
whole-
census.
Yeah, and that information is all, it's just a matter of someone having to sit down and dig it out, but that's all public information.
And so what you're suggesting is maybe we don't even need that?
I'm not suggesting it one way or the other, but do we need that? Part of our recommendations in the new master plan is to continually to look at our community profile to understand, what is
I think population is
Yeah.
a must-have.
Yeah.
Because you can base everything
So.
else off of that.
And just because we say we're not gonna update it by July 2018, we can say, all right, we're gonna work on this and we can update that chapter later on. So, a lot of towns are working, they work chapter by chapter. And so each chapter will have an updated, with a date on it. So I guess the questions for these sections are, is it important to the master plan? Does it need to get updated? Does it need to get updated before July? And if that's true, who's gonna do it? So I think, if we start with the community profile section, that's the, population demographics. What does everyone think about that? Its relevance to the master plan?
Well, big raw numbers only show who's here, but I think it would be more relevant if you could break it down to age group almost.
Yeah.
Who has kids in school?
Yeah,
Who's had, the seniors living among us and
yeah,
new people moving in, which is kind of reflected in the population numbers. But, at this point, we could probably predict a trend having, 10, 12 years of data behind it, and it would kind of guide, if we're seeing that the population is aging or that new families are coming in, it's going to kind of change a little bit where we're going from that point.
Right, and the school demographics is covered, at least in this volume, in volume 2, in the education section,
Okay.
pretty extensively. So,
I was gonna ask, there's a graph relative, it's titled Plymouth Population Growth Relative to County and State. And previous to that, there's a big discussion about exactly that with another graph, talking about population trends. And I see a lot of redundancy.
yep.
That was my comment, I just scratched.
Well, we used to
page.
pay the planning board by the page.
Yeah. It was worth it.
Then I would like us to be very inexpensive.
Yes.
Okay, so,
I guess a general comment, redundancy.
Yep.
Just hone out. We say it once, we don't have to say it again.
Well, I think they're slightly different pictures, and I'm not sure about the relevance of it, period, but on page 3 is nearby communities, and 4 is a broader look at the statewide picture comparison.
I guess my question is, what really does it matter? I mean, what does it have to do with what our vision is for the town, for our master plan?
Well, I think comparison of nearby towns is important because, that those are your competitors for population potentially.
And sometimes you don't know the significance of some of this information until you need it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I guess if it's just a matter of going to the most current census, because it seems like that's where all this information came from, and just updating it.
yep.
People could pick and choose. Unless we see something that definitely is, repeating itself or is just not, we feel it just doesn't need to be in there.
I guess I'm kind of struggling figuring out how we're going to use, because it's all really interesting, and I don't think it's not important. I just don't know if it's important to the master plan.
Right.
So, do we need some sort of like secondary report that's like, okay, this is the population demographics of Plymouth every 10 years. We give the census a couple years and we update the population demographics for our town, which can cover the school stuff, because the schools are watching I imagine are watching the population demographics a whole lot more closely than we are.
Yes.
And I would think that 5 years down the road, if we've got this massive housing development project, subdivision, something that's really expected to have an impact on the schools, we might need some sort of secondary report anyway to support that. We might not be getting what we need out of this. I don't know. I just don't want to spend a whole lot of time updating something that is just going to go hide in somebody else's office.
We just use the census, the original source.
Right.
And not even, repeat, if people need this information, it exists. We
available.
can actually refer them to.
Yeah, and it could all be combined in one chart, like this is the population as of, 2017. This is the school population as of 2017. Broken out into the Plymouth school and the regional high school.
Yeah.
And, that pretty much covers that, and people can interpolate what the data actually means. If the general population is shrinking, but the school population is going up, that's showing a different kind of trend. That means, to me, it would mean that younger people are moving to Plymouth.
Yep.
So, information that I think is important is like population projections. That has everything to do with what, the work we do. Possibly, poverty levels, as far as providing the appropriate kind of housing, do we have enough? How do we provide that? But like I said, if all that information is readily available somewhere else, and does Plymouth have a section of the most current census report?
You can get that information on the state, some Bureau of Business Statistics
Yeah.
or something. I can't remember what it's called.
We update them every year, the Census Bureau,
Yeah.
through ELP, or whatever they're calling it these days.
Is that something
Oh.
that can be printed out?
Office of Strategic Initiatives.
Yes. Well, I fill it out and I send it off, but mostly they're looking at housing on those, not raw people numbers.
So I think what our limitations are right now is we don't necessarily know what those resources are. So it's, it's hard to say like, oh, the resources are there, but we just don't necessarily know. Because this was a resource and I didn't really know it was there. So,
And the advantage of this is that it's all compiled in one place, as opposed to scattered, which is probably why it came about, because otherwise it was all scattered in 20 different places.
I'm wondering if it would make sense to take a step back here and if we could start, I don't know how many of you guys have looked at other master plans from other towns, if that might be something helpful to just see, like, is the town of Holderness, are they going into this much detail about certain things, or are they going into more detail, or, I don't know if that makes sense, just to see what other people are doing, have other examples. But,
Were you in on the construction of this, Jack? This particular,
Not this
Iteration?
version,
not this version?
no.
Yeah, this came out, what, 2006?
Miriam was,
Yes.
we had not slapdashed, but we put together some kind of master plan or
Yeah.
groundwork for it.
Right. Yeah, as I recall, it was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
It was shortly after I started working here. that
Right.
They finally confirmed it.
So.
But the other question
This
is-
has been a basis, or that was a basis.
Do you think that we need up-to-date data to continue with the other 3 chapters? And then file that as an appendix
right.
later?
Right, I think we can continue on with, my notes are that, let's see, community profile, not really sure what to do. The housing, there's a ton of information. I don't have a sense for what that would take to update the housing section, or if, or do we need a better housing assessment? Is that a need that we have? I think the historic resources section is something we could maybe just throw to the Historical Society and maybe see if there is a grad student who would like to volunteer their services from the Historic Preservation Program at Plymouth State.
And I think as far as that went, this section, sense of place, with the historic and the natural heritage, that had the least, that almost, well, one thing, history,
Yeah.
not like you update that so much.
Yeah.
Some
And-
do.
Yeah, well, or, what do you call that?
We're doing it all the time.
It's almost like this, different sections are individual publications,
Yep.
public relations,
Yep.
kind of
Right.
have a grab bag available for somebody to come in and just really compile them maybe as, again, as a reference
Yep.
for the first section.
I see it being a great thing, and just available on the website where you can have each of these sections. And so Steve's class is gonna do the natural heritage section. The community facilities and services, I thought was just a little over the top.
The
I agree.
which?
The one that lists every vehicle and
Yeah.
how many
Yeah.
pounds of sand is
I mean,
sitting
if we're
in-
gonna keep that, that all needs to be, because I'm sure that's one of those vehicles is, it's totally changed. But like the town of Plymouth structure, is that the same? It seems like that's changed, right? I mean, do we still have a, town administrator? or-
Yeah.
Is that you?
No,
No. What? Or is that Paul Fraser?
it's Paul.
Paul, okay.
Yeah,
But didn't we sort of organize something
That
that?
was just me in Sharon's position.
Oh, okay.
I think that that's kind of irrelevant to the master plan
Yeah,
itself. It's just, it's interesting, but I think that's more, I think it's just, it's extra. Beyond what we need to be talking about.
granted, a lot of people don't know,
Right.
but They're
if
not
they
interested
don't-
in finding out either.
Yeah, I was going to say that, and part of the rationale was there was a very significant lack of public understanding of the organization of the community and its impact. I mean, we are a regional hub, and we do interface with the other communities, but they don't know what Bryan does, for example, or what we do,
Right.
for example.
Well, if I could say something just from everybody that I've just known personally in town and everything that I hear, as far as this master plan or anything like that goes, people have said, we need more stores here. Somebody said, why can't we have like a Kentucky Fried Chicken? People are interested in things that they have to keep running out of town for.
Right.
They'd like to see them here, and where this is like the hub, I would think a business would be able to do well, because look at all these little towns that will come into this. But if all that ends up being in Campton, Ashland, they're gonna end up being the hub.
Yes, the only thing that we can do is set the table for people to come in, and then it's private enterprise that decides whether to locate in Plymouth or not.
Part of the issue with that has been historically the litigatory aspects of this
Absolutely.
community. And I'm not going to go down the road.
Well, it started when Tenny Mountain Highway was being developed, because the downtown merchants were truly afraid that they would bleed off all the business.
Right.
So what did they do? They changed their emphasis, and now it's boutique. It's walkable. There are sidewalk cafes. You know, people go in downtown for certain reasons. You know, if they want new jeans, they'll go out to Tenny Mountain Highway, unless they work, and they'll get it at Rand. So, there's still a lot of the same things being offered downtown, but not on the scale that they are offered out there. That was recognized even by a lot of the downtown merchants at the time, when they realized what the buildings were going to be put up out there were, it might be feeding out of the same bowl, but not quite as much, because they still have the services here. I know a lot of people would rather, they'll go to Rand's for their hardware, even though you can pick up, sink washers up at Walmart. But, it's the downtown feel. They're going to come down, they're going to go to the post office, they're going to, take care of their walkable business downtown. So as long as we have enough of those services available to get the spin-off businesses, that makes the merchants happy downtown.
Well, and that gets back, if I could, to, I think, Chris's point about the population. It all is driven by the economy that's provided potential employees within the town. If we don't have an economy, which we need to foster more of,
Right.
we're not going to have employers, and then we're
This
not
was
gonna
the
have
point I was
employees.
making at the
Yeah.
SEC today.
Yeah.
I didn't get to use it, but you could dynamite Tenny Mountain Highway and it would have less effect on the town's economy than digging up Main Street for Northern Pass.
Mhm.
So, it's almost like we have two different types of business district, it's interesting,
I think it's desirable.
Yes.
For many people, I think there are a portion of the population who don't want to do business on Tenny Mountain Highway because driving is a nightmare and it's ugly.
Yeah.
And some people would prefer to only do business in town.
And when you do business at Walmart, all that money goes out of the community. When you do
Right.
business at Rand's,
Right.
that stays in the community.
There's still a few locally based, or at least regionally based businesses out there.
Yes.
But you're right, that is a factor in a lot of people's shopping, they want to keep it local.
I may have missed this piece, being new, but where is the data from the survey?
So the data from the survey, you'll see a little bit in the vision section, in the land use chapter, and I think there's some in the,
The implementation, isn't a lot of that stuff a direct
I've got
response?
so many chapters right now.
I know.
all over the
And
place.
is that a driving source of information for this development, or?
For the development of the master plan?
Yeah.
I think a lot of I think you're right, the implementation section, that came from a lot of the,
Scoping sessions, is
Yeah,
that what they call
yeah.
those? Yeah, I mean, I hope so, because that was
That's-
Yeah.
asking people what they want,
they
what they
want,
like
yeah.
about
Right.
Plymouth, and, I mean, that's in here.
Yep. So basically what we have, and I mean, just thinking about what we actually have in existence right now that is updated, are the, sort of the core of the master plan, the vision, the land use, and the implementation. And I think those need some just general edits, and they're fairly good. We've got the economic profile, which is really just a rewrite of what was in the 2008, or the volume 2, which is dated 2005. And then the transportation, which I think does have a lot more information in it. So, and I don't know if this makes sense, if we want to go into details on the volume 2 stuff. Does it make sense to kind of think about what our plan is for this final product? Do we want a vision, land use, implementation section that's printable, it's engaging, and then a backlog, that's not the right word, but all this other information updated as we can do it, as primarily as on the town website. We make it printable as well, but something that's,
I think that would be a much more manageable plan.
so, with reference to it in the actual master plan. So the master plan is
Yeah.
fairly simple, but we've got all this other information.
Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I think we want it to be accessible. It's tricky, because it needs to be comprehensive, but when I looked at all of Steve's example master plans, it's not very usable if it's too much to digest.
Well, and especially for who uses I mean, and I use the Conservation Commission as a great example of, we operate totally differently if we're using the master plan than the willy-nilly kind of operation that we've been engaged in. I mean, the Conservation Commission has done some good things, but that master plan is, I mean, that, if you diligently refer to that thing and follow all those responsibilities, one thing, you're incredibly busy, but actually you have a lot of focus, a lot of guidance that you don't, I think it's the most useful for all these different commissions
Right.
and committees. And
It lends itself to more cohesive productivity across departments and committees.
People
and-
have a strange idea of what the master plan was, or is. Some people think it's the law, where it's a guidance document. And, you can only urge so much, but if somebody proposes something that's valuable to the community that doesn't fit in the book, you better have a damn good reason not to turn them down. You'd have to welcome them with open arms, especially at this point in time. And then it goes to, BMPs, which would go back to the Conservation Commission, places, urging people not to develop close. I mean, we have things that are lacking in our actual applications, like wetland setbacks. There are none in Plymouth. So, something like that might be of interest to developing, a guidance for that, you take into account, or, best management practices say, not to build right at the edge of the delineation, but to hold back, X number of feet,
Well, the master plan should be able to guide the development of those regulations as well. It
Right.
should, it's there to sort of assess where there are holes and help us.
But we've been so busy running in place, they're just trying to keep up with
Yeah.
not just the master plan, but everything else, that's going on around us.
Right.
Sometimes it's kind of a forest and trees situation.
I've also heard it said that, we hire a consultant to write the master plan, but maybe we should be hiring consultants instead to help us implement the master plan, because we've got to drive that process once it's actually here.
Yes.
So I think that's our job coming up as soon as this is over, is using our work sessions to assess the master plan.
Right.
and sorry, every month. So, and that's kind of my goal is once this is in place is to start actually using it regularly, so.
And the master plan is a living document.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to change.
But, you know, for example, there haven't been a lot of zoning amendments coming out of the planning board in the past several years. Just the big ones, you know, the things that we have to act on, like the
We've been so
ADUs.
busy with this master plan.
Well, there you have it. But, you know, that's what I mean. So a lot of that gets put
Yep.
aside because, you know, the business is there, but, you know, maybe on the off hours. And we discussed, both myself and Miriam and with Sharon, in the past that, you know, you don't meet often enough to really get into the details on a lot of that, you know. And it's a lot to put on a civilian board, you know, to have a meeting every Thursday, you know. So, you know, it's almost like maybe it should be put onto a calendar that, you know, in May you stop, you know, talking about other things and you know, you talk about amendments, you know, things of that nature, and, you know, which would be, reflects back to the master plan, and that would be your implementation at that point, because.
Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about that in May.
Was a suggestion.
Okay. So, does that sound good that we've got like this core, that it's kind of set up fairly similarly, but we want to do it in a way that's maybe a little more accessible? We have Steve's class doing the natural resources section. I'm sure we'll have to check with him to see what other sections they might be able to take on. We have the transportation. The arts and recreation felt really weak to me. The education seemed a little over the top. I don't think we need to be including as much about Plymouth State. I think we can refer to their master plan instead of trying to include all it, you know, in text in ours. So.
They do have a big impact population-wise.
Right.
And, you know, on the merchants in town.
No, I'm not saying remove them completely,
Right.
but as far as the, you know, trying to summarize their university master plan. I
Right,
think
and even
we-
they've changed it up, you know,
Yeah.
recently. So, you know, maybe, you know, if they could give us an excerpt from theirs to include, you know,
Yeah.
this is what the Plymouth State would like to see. You know, and wholly adopt it, and that way it's just pass-through information instead of us having to develop it.
So it's hard without Steve here to know just what his class can take on. My guess is, so the historic resources profile, I think we definitely want to run that by the Historical Society, but my guess is the entire section, Volume 2, Section 2, A and B could probably go to Steve's class. I think the rest we'll probably have to figure out other.
Is this an opportunity for us to nail down vision, land use, and implementation?
As far as,
Getting it ready for print, you know, if we're gonna be waiting for, you know,
Yeah.
updating on the data, there shouldn't be, not a lot of it is tied to real hard points.
yep,
So if we did have to, you know, do a reference to it,
I think that might be something that maybe, because we're meeting again in 2 weeks.
is it, or are we meeting the 28th, right? Did we not?
28th?
Yeah, like next Thursday?
I thought it was the 4th.
Okay.
We're not meeting the 4th Thursday?
You just gave us something that had all that. Is that in here?
No, not the 4th Thursday.
It says,
It's
something says the 28th. I read it too.
It would be at the bottom of that, Chris. The work sessions are down below.
But although this is next year, so it wouldn't have
Oh, okay.
2017. We have December 26th.
That was the deadline.
That's the deadline.
We don't have any real business for the public hearing meeting.
Which is the 18th of January.
Right, I can't see that far.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. So, you know, and I think the sense of the board was that we would hold work sessions on all the scheduled dates and fit in others as we can.
Well, so, okay, yeah, but we're not meeting next week, right?
I thought we were.
Oh,
And that, just to jump ahead a little bit, there is, somebody wanted to make a non-binding presentation at that work session.
is that a scheduled work session though, on the 28th?
Well, I told them that we were kind of ramping up our schedule,
Oh, okay.
but I can wave them off at this point. Unfortunately, it's Tenny.
Oh. I mean, we're meeting the following week,
Okay.
for sure, on the 4th.
Is it the 4th or the 8th?
4th.
Oh, 18th I have here. Okay. 4th, yeah, if you would like, I'll see if you can move up.
Okay, yeah, is anyone else planning on meeting on the 28th? I mean, I just
I
promised
would, but
I just promised to be cracking
have
the
no
whip,
life.
and now I'm all panicked that I gotta meet next week. So I think if we could have a week off, that might be nice for me.
Shall we be nice to the chair? Okay.
But what it might be nice to do is for everyone to get a really good, solid read-through on chapters 1, 2, and 3, I think, of the new master plan. I don't even know how to keep this stuff straight anymore.
So we're in volume 1.
We've gone to volume 1.
I want to
Okay.
scribble that right out, but yeah. No, that's the old stuff. I want the new stuff, the,
New stuff.
looks like this.
Which is
It
chapter.
doesn't have draft 9 November on it.
Okay. Oh, I know, I have it here. Okay, like
So
this?
chapters 1, 2, and 3, and I think it would be helpful to get an opinion, everyone to sort of weigh in on how close are we to being able to have this, what the section that is formally known as Volume 1, but what we're gonna be calling the master plan, not, and then the other stuff is the master plan supporting documents or something like that. But this is going to be, this is our simplified master plan,
What is 3?
Rebecca,
please implementation.
does that include the transportation economic
I think,
profiles?
I think maybe we need to decide where we want to put those, if we want to have the updated supporting documents and then to be updated supporting documents.
I think, my opinion,
Yep.
I think it'd be great reference material.
And I really want to, I'm hoping Steve will be here next time we meet, just because I think he's got a lot of experience and I kind of like him to weigh in on what he thinks about this stuff. So if he's not going to be here, I will try and meet with him separately to get a sense of what he thinks about this, so. Because this stack of paper is like a doable, readable amount.
Yeah.
So,
Can I just take a peek at your chapter 3?
yeah.
Which 1 and 2 does she have?
There's one, that looks like this.
And that's the implementation chapter, chapter 3. I mean, we've been over that.
We've been over it a
piece,
lot,
So
so
it should be,
That's chapter 1. That'll
should be good to go with it.
and I think the question with that, do we want it to look like this? Is that usable? That was the
mean,
question I had for the Conservation Commission.
used to it.
They seem to have no problem with it.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I guess I do have that, except for the cover page.
They're the same.
I have an old draft.
Okay,
There were iteration.
all right, so we're gonna review chapters 1, 2, and 3. And then, yeah, think about the new transportation and economic development chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, I do feel like we're kind of, running in place here, but I'm not quite sure how to, what we really need to do next.
Oh, we're so flooded with data. We got to pick one and go with it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think this is a good plan
Yeah.
to,
Like you said,
Pick
this is
something.
doable for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So like the vision section, I mean, I've read that, I read it with the, I think that thing, except for a couple little, a couple of dates
Yep.
that need to be updated to 2018,
I-
because that's when this thing's coming out.
my thing is, I would just like to not bury the lead and not, I mean, it's like, this is the vision chapter, maybe we need an introduction to the master plan and then a vision. Because this is like, okay, this is our vision chapter, then it's like a whole lot about what a master plan is, and then we get to the last page and it says, okay, here's our vision.
Here's the vision, yeah.
So,
Want to just move that up front?
Yeah, what is the
yeah.
master plan should be.
And then it's okay, so
Explain to-
supporting information, and it's more of a
Right.
general introduction to the Plymouth master plan, but the vision, like, that's important, so.
Good point.
And then we can, I mean, even that, maybe that's its own, it could potentially be its own chapter, and it's, maybe it looks really cool, it's got a, bigger font or a nice picture or something like that, just
Right.
something that's engaging and,
Yep.
and then, the other thing, Brian, might be something I can dig back through my email too, but if we can get some of the supporting information that came out of the surveys, I think that might be something that might be nice to include as one of those other sections of information. And I guess we got another week with North Country Council. If they have the, I don't know if I still have them, but just those files of the summaries of the survey. So.
Yeah, I remember some of those example plans had sort of those, I'm not a fan of the Wordle, but the Wordles with the, frequently occurring valued aspects of community and sort of something, an infographic that would reflect the survey vision.
Yep. But it might be nice, because I feel like we talk about that a lot, whereas the information that came back from the survey, so whether that's part of like the master plan chunk or just something else that we have that's like, this is the information we gathered from the master plan survey.
So,
It should be a deliverable on termination.
Yeah.
All that
I
data.
just don't, because of all these transitions, some of the stuff just seems to be gone.
so up to maybe now, that suggestion to move this vision for Plymouth's future up to the front of the document and then reformat everything accordingly, we would tell Greg, are we still so now where are we gonna, is this on a computer somewhere? How do we actually format this?
Chris and Jack.
Well, I mean, and I have it written on here, but like, how do we where's this document that we can work on?
We need the working Word documents for this, which,
Right, that was, the last three I sent was the chapters that Greg provided.
okay.
1, 2, and 3.
How does I guess we can't use a Google Doc, can we? You guys could work on it, we can't all work in a Google Doc to
I
try and
don't
do it.
think we probably all want to be working in a
No,
Google Doc.
no, I was just trying to think about the best way to edit it without there being a
Right,
bazillion different
right,
edits, but we
right.
just can't we can't all be collaborating on something.
Which is why I think you guys were gonna work together to
Yeah.
take good notes and go do that work.
Because I think right now, we could have this vision chapter done.
We could have it done tomorrow.
Yeah, and that would be kind of cool to say, okay, the vision chapter's done, like so,
That would feel good.
Yeah.
and on that, and Jack, maybe afterwards you and I can talk and figure, on that first, what is now the first page, I don't like, and this is a stylistic point, this master plan is, colon, and then it seems like kind of awkward that every bullet point is this master plan is, usually when you do that, you drop that redundant master plan is, and just this master plan is a collection of plans.
Could I ask the chair if we could take some editorial liberty?
Please. I mean, that's my opinion. If the rest of the board agrees, then I'm not crazy about how this is phrased.
Yes.
There's a lot of contractorese in all of it.
Yeah, the way
Boilerplate.
this whole what is the master plan section, it feels a little condescending to me.
Yes.
So,
we can
Well,
cut
I
that
mean,
down.
Not
This
to
is
me
going to be
specifically, but yeah.
in the intro chapter.
Yep,
And it can be, instead of this master plan is,
Yeah.
or the idea of a master
Yeah.
plan is.
Or what is a
Put it
master
in real
plan,
broad
yeah.
terms. The next time we do this, we can just throw that chapter
Direct it to
in
the
saying.
audience.
yep.
Who's
Or the next
real
time we do
audience?
this, the next board's gonna be like, what were they thinking? But,
Is, my approach, if I could, would be is I mentioned it, is address the document to your constituency.
Right.
Who are we publishing this for? And I think it's newcomers to the town. It's potential newcomers to the town. It's people who've been here who don't know what the master plan
Right.
is because they haven't seen it yet. Through no fault of anybody's, but you know, let's.
Yeah, I'd say have at the
It's kind of
language,
like
yeah.
how to read this and interpret this document
Yeah.
chapter almost.
Yeah. I think, and what I was trying to, you know, be careful and with North Country Council is I think that's why I didn't want them to edit too much further, because I just think the language, we can do so much more with the language. So I would say, yeah, have at it, make it, direct it to the right audience, make it sound a little warmer, and make it a little more specific to Plymouth, because I don't think that we were necessarily getting that. Which is, I mean, that's how these things work, is it's just, you know, reiterations of plan after plan from different communities and stuff like that, so. Yeah. All right, so you guys will start working on, do we want to just start, you guys want to start editing it right away, or do we want to,
I'd like to get something done.
Okay.
You know, I think it would be awesome if we could, and like implementation, that chapter, that should be easy too, because that, at this point,
Yep.
I think when this is presented to the public the first time, we'll get a lot of information. The other, you know, when people, especially the different commissions and committees,
Right.
see, wait, I should be on this, I shouldn't be on that, that's not my responsibility. You know, that type of thing. You know, we can make some further changes, but I think that we should be able to edit those two sections up quickly.
Sure. In fact,
And probably I think all this stuff, but those two should be pretty no-brainers.
Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, you did send out 1, 2, and 3 to us, correct?
Yes, that was the one
Digitally.
that you picked up on the zip drive.
That was section.
Two and
All
three of the
all
new-
chapter
Two.
2.
Oh, new 1, 2, and 3 you're talking about.
Oh, these, yes, these are the ones, I believe I gave you all a complete set
Yes,
at the
I think you
meeting
did.
before last.
I think
But
you
the
did.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 in a digital version of what you're looking for, the Word document.
Digital version's fine.
Yeah.
I can scan it and convert it,
Okay,
doesn't matter.
okay.
Yeah,
Um,
that, ultimately, when we're a little bit closer to having it final, I'm gonna put it all electronic, and it's a lot easier for many of us
Like,
to deal with.
I'll give you a
It's certainly
digital
more
copy.
transportable.
I'll give you a digital copy.
Okay, so are you, Bonnie and Bridget, are you okay with these two guys taking on some of the heavy editing?
Yeah.
I certainly am.
Okay, so I would say if you want to, if you look through it in the next couple weeks, make sure that you get any edits directly to these guys, so that they can, as they work on their edits, they can specifically,
Probably easiest through Brian.
okay.
And I guess that was a question I had. Can we have, is that a conversation we can have, like if
You and Jack,
I-
absolutely, you're not a quorum.
Yeah, as long as it's
And you're
not
also
a-
being assigned, almost like a subcommittee by the chair.
Okay.
So,
The
yeah,
sub-ed-
statutorily, you're
The
covered.
subcommittee for editing.
And we're not making decisions,
Right.
you know, procedural decisions. It's,
No.
you
No,
know,
and your final product will be
artistic.
laid before the board for
Yeah.
adoption.
Yeah.
It's all
Okay. Yeah.
to come before the board anyway. Substantively, there will not be any change.
Right.
That, exactly.
Okay, and what is this downtown parking occupancy count that Greg gave us? Remember, is this part of the master plan, or was this? What
He
is,
did a study, and that's the kind of stuff that would be nice to have available
Yes.
now, since it exists, if we can get it in a PDF format, and have it on the sort of master, or, planning board resources or something. It would also be nice if our minutes were
if I
up to
have
date on the
I think I've
the
got it.
website too.
and here's, this may be like just a ridiculous idea, but volume 2, we just leave it as as the document that it is and update it at another, you know, like, work on this stuff, but just have that as the data, because that, I mean, it's still usable data. It's not totally up to date,
Yep.
but.
I think we just need to have a public, if we're calling it all the master plan, we have to have a public hearing before we
Yes,
adopt it as a board.
but if we're going with the minimums, the
Yeah.
3 chapters,
Yeah.
and saying that we're compiling the data in a readable form that we use to make these decisions. And that would be separate, and that way you can put a little daylight between them, so it's not master plan, it's a supporting document.
The other option would be to adopt the, you know, what we've got here for chapters 1, 2, and 3, the economic transportation, which have been updated, and then the old sections, we could adopt that as the entire master plan. I think it's much more simple to call this the master plan, and then
I agree.
the appendix of supporting documents.
Right.
So,
And I'm just thinking we might be able to get away with just letting that be what it is for another, 10 years. Because
It's a snapshot of the town in
Yeah.
2017, is
yeah,
what it is.
and most of it hasn't really changed that much.
Is that in compliance with what's required for a master
Yes.
plan?
the chapters 1, 2, and 3, we're done. I mean, and the public can have a hearing.
That right on your
Yeah, yeah. Chapters 1, 2, 3, and we're covering the three things we need.
Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
I mean, that's the important part of it.
yep.
So,
I guess
you know,
chapters 1 and 2, and we've got what we need, implementation is important as well. But I think some of that stuff, it's good to have that information in there. It's just, we're not accessing it anyway. This is what we've been really calling the master plan for the past 10 years anyway, 10 plus years, so. Okay, so moving forward, we're all gonna go through the new chapters 1, 2, and 3. And you guys will start working on some edits that, I think it's helpful for me to have things a couple days in advance before the next meeting. So, which is the 4th. If it doesn't happen before then, that's okay. Anything else that we need to? I guess maybe we haven't really talked thoroughly about this, but exactly how we want, or which of these sections we think, if there are any priority sections remaining in the former volume 2 that we definitely think need to be updated now as opposed to later, knowing that we pretty much have 2, a sense of place, that one's pretty much good, so.
I would imagine, I'm guessing that the recreation profile would be quite different
Yep.
in 2018 than it was in 2005.
So maybe we could take a heavier look at the recreation profile before next time and see what kind of effort we think we'll take to get that updated. But I think at this point, it's most important to get the actual master plan done, so. All right.
And the housing profile is based on numbers.
Yep,
So if we got the new numbers, we could use the same language
right,
as the last.
right.
And I think the population profile is kind of similar to that. I mean, it's a little bit different, but, I mean, it really is just a continuation of the numbers that we already have.
Right.
So we could, that part of the document would hardly change at all. We just put, different dates and. But if we have to decide, it sounds like we're up in the air whether we want to do that or get rid of some of that.
My inclination, and I think it's been this way for a little while, is we need to focus on this and get this part done and then worry about the rest of it, so.
All right, so, and that sounds, I mean, I like that idea.
This process, we're over, I mean, it's been 6 months over,
Okay.
Yeah.
so.
And we're inundated with data, so we can cut that down a little
Yeah.
bit to enable us to work on it.
So, this might change things a little bit with Steve's class, but I'll reach out to him and check in with him. But, I mean, we're meeting again in 2 weeks, so. So much paper.
I know, and I had the old draft and this draft, because I had taken notes on the old draft, so last night at the Conservation Commission meeting, I have a mess. And they all had it on, electronic documents, but nobody printed all this out, so.
One thing I will say in one of the serving in the community section, actually had the Conservation Commission listed as like an outside organization.
What's that? I'm
In
sorry.
one in the old, in the old volume too, it had the Conservation Commission listed as like an outside organization with all these other nonprofits that,
Wow.
yeah.
And there's a reason for that. That's how the Conservation Commission has historically operated.
Yep.
And I'm trying to change that. That's why, we're meeting here now. And I'd really like us to be part of the town and not this
Right.
separate entity. I think,
I think it's great.
so,
It seems that the board as it stands today, the commission as it stands today, is much more involved with that than they were in the past.
I think they were purposely
It was almost,
secretive and.
yeah, a
They-
little bit of
yeah,
that, and it was,
yeah.
it was, I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody, but it was more about the ski trails than the broader picture of conservation.
Okay. Are we good to wrap up this discussion? We've got a good place to jump off of. Everyone's got at least a little something to do.
Yeah, and Jack, maybe we could just talk a little bit and figure out
Absolutely.
how we're gonna coordinate. I don't know if we should do it on, just by email, and everybody doesn't have to be in this
Yeah, I
conversation.
think it's better if it stays, if it's gonna be a conversation, it should stay just between the two of you. I'm happy
If
to
you need
review.
anything published out, just send it to me, and I'll make sure it goes to everybody.
Or if you need an outside reviewer, just let me know.
Yeah, well, everyone will review it.
Okay, so wrapping up the master plan discussion, again. Any unfinished or other business?
I have some other business, Madam Chair.
Okay,
I was approached this week by two future applicants. One was the non-binding presentation that we've moved off to the new year, was the development at Tenny Mountain.
okay.
He's ready to present, to get our ideas on how best to proceed with that. I don't have a whole lot of the data behind the project, other than it's a similar model to the Riverwalk at Loon, where it's almost a condominium hotel slash timeshare attached second home. And the model, it's physically, it'll look very similar to those buildings.
Are we talking about a housing, or are we talking about a ski area?
It's housing at Tenny,
Okay.
where the old Mountainside development was, which was just foundations since we poured them in the 80s. So, and the other is the lot that's next to where the old liquor store was, the one that was graded out, had was the Blossom Properties, what it was referred to. It was the old farmhouse.
Okay.
They are, there's a, yeah, I'm kind of caught between, convenience store slash gas station at that place.
Wait, where is this?
Tenny Mountain Highway, just after the entrance to Riverside Landing. There's that nice flat
Okay,
pad
yeah.
that they built.
Okay.
So that,
With a
That-
separate
Is
entrance?
that where
with
they're,
a separate entrance.
is that where they're drilling?
Yes.
Okay.
They're doing all the prep work for it.
But it's
And
part of the western edge of the Riverside Landing development, or is it a separate parcel?
It's actually, well, I don't think that they folded it into the big parcel.
Okay.
I thought it
But they
was
may
separate.
have.
I thought it was separate.
Well, in order to get the fill up there, I think they may have had to do, to merge the properties.
Yeah.
Because you can't move dirt from parcel to parcel, but you can move it around on your parcel in the environmentally sensitive zone. And I'm not even sure how much of that property is actually in it, because it's 500 feet from the river, and, I'd have to look at the map.
So somebody wants to put a convenience store gas pump place.
Correct.
right up by where they've got the
Convenience store and
7-Eleven.
gas pump place.
Yeah, right, where all the other ones.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I just,
Well, we lost the in-town, one of our in-town gas stations.
which one?
The Tedeschi's, they pulled the
Oh,
pumps.
down by the laundromat?
Right.
That's true, we did.
That was mine because it was closest to my house. So currently downtown, it's only the Irving station up the street. Many people conflate the stuff on 175 with being in Plymouth, but they aren't. And so it's part of the continuing development there, and there may be more to it than that, but I don't know what or where at this point. So he's going to just drop it by to see how you feel. And
So it's a non-binding?
yes,
step,
yes,
right?
both of these.
Okay. So we can prepare for a public hearing, perhaps.
Yes, that's the same thing that Roe did.
Yep, okay. All right. Any other business?
No, that was it from my side.
Any public comments?
First, very good meeting and a lot of work. Read the first part that I got a copy of. I like the idea of having the master plan reference data book. Need a name on that. Because that is helpful for people that do studies and actual planning to use the application of the master plan. To comment on two parts. One is on that parking study. I did the original parking study back in 99 or 90. That was part of the Main Street program. So we did a total inventory of all the spaces that were owned by private people, town-owned, municipal, and federal and state government. And then I went through and I researched all of the federal, state, local laws, rules, regulations, codes, and standards associated with parking. And there are quite a few. And I wrote up a 13-page document, multicolored graphics. The biggest problem with the whole thing is people can't transition from a concept of knowing that they need more parking in a downtown area, village commercial zone, for which we have no parking ordinance obligating anybody to put any parking in, and actually getting something changed, something accomplished to satisfy our master plan that acknowledges that we need to do something with it. And I was one of the planning board members back in 83, 84 on the first master plan for the town. And we have said the same thing for the last 35 years, and everybody still acknowledges the same thing, but we haven't moved forward.
And that's that we need more downtown parking.
That we need more downtown parking. Second, that all ties in with obviously our economic development to attract new businesses or accessory, it's called accessory businesses to the existing ones. And if you know anything about that, there's a North American Industry Classification Guide which lists all industries, and then each sector industry has a accessory industry. And so where we may not want the primary industry, the accessory industry is as much a valuable to generating jobs and fit the space limitations we have for the village commercial, or village Main Street job area. So trying to understand some of the concepts that everybody keeps discussing, but getting from there to actual agenda, line item, timeline actions that can be accomplished to move that forward to see a realization of what we'd like to have. I think has been one of our issues. You had talked about this recreational study, and I'm using the cluster system from the university as a profile of how do we get economic development for new jobs in trying to attract our high school graduates and our college, university graduates that like to stay in a local area and see about getting into an industry or a job that they find exciting. And one of the biggest ones is entertainment and recreation, and that is a cluster element that's being taught at the university. It also works very well with our Conservation Commission, all the source document you have in your reference data material. We have a lot of independent, like we have the Heritage Trail, we have all these walking trails, we have a lot of little stuff, but it's an uncoordinated action that we have that could be or should be kind of pulled together as a ecotourism or tourism of recreation for the town of Plymouth. So we've got a lot of best kept secrets, and that I think would be a very good economic development type activity. And obviously that would be something to do with the university, since it is a major cluster subject, that they would have people interested in trying to see what kind of industries, recreational industries, that would use some of the space. And some of the really good places was right out behind the state liquor store. Because if you look at that environmental mitigation area, it is a substantial piece of real estate that's devoid of anything, and it'll have to stay that way. But doesn't mean you can't ski it, walk it, run it, do any kind of recreational. And I was talking to the landowner with it when we were evaluating the final riprapping for the state liquor store. And like I say, it's totally out of sight unless you actually walk out there and look at it. You'd never know it's a potential resource for recreational. So we just have so many things right here in the town of Plymouth. You have 16 hills in the town of Plymouth, but nobody knows their name. We have 14 designated wetlands, but nobody knows their name. And if they showed up on site, the only thing they can tell you is it's a wetlands because it has water in it, but they can't identify the distinguishing features of it. The master plan, as I've seen it over the years, for all the hard work that goes on behind the scene by the board members to pull it together, it still gets put on the shelves, and only hardcore people like me that will buy a copy of it to actually study it and see how I, as a citizen, could do something with it to maybe enhance the quality of life, quality of living in the town of Plymouth, and then possibly look at a business potential for it. So and there's so many parts to it, but I think the focusing on the entertainment, recreational part is something that's there was a New Hampshire magazine this month, one of their main articles was the economic viability and the return on investment. They had a lot of reference material of what the customers spent on site doing the activity and what they spent in the town doing that activity. So in other words, people come to do a walk, a run, or whatever, and then you finish that and they go, well, I'm hungry, let's go get something to eat, or let's go shopping, or whatever. That's the secondary value of it. And it's all, somebody else has already done that work for us. So makes a great baseline case for the fact that we have the type of environment and the environs that allow us to have all these different types of activities, and we need to start seeing how we can make a return on investment, make all that give us a return on investment. The fact that the town of Plymouth is the only town in the state of New Hampshire that has all 6 modes of transportation infrastructure within its bounds. All 6 modes. The only other cities that have it are Concord, Manchester, and Portsmouth. So we lucked out by location with the interstate, 2 rivers, we have an airport, we have heliport, state highways. We have literally all 6 modes. And I asked the business people, so what's your return on investment for it? And nobody can come up with a qualitative answer for it. So having unique resources and not having a means to acknowledge them and then apply them to actually enhance our quality of life and quality of living, I think that's where we're missing some of the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.